Welcome to today's story. In this video we dive into one of the most famous love stories ever told. A tale of passion, courage, and the cost of hatred. Join me as we step into the city of Verona and follow the unforgettable journey of Romeo and Juliet, two young hearts fighting for love in a world determined to keep them apart. The sun was still rising over the old city of Verona, painting the sky with soft colors. People hurried through the streets, merchants opened their shops, and families began their daily business. But beneath the peaceful morning lay a tension everyone could feel. Two powerful families, the Montagues and the Capulets, had been enemies for longer than anyone could remember. Their anger had become a part of everyday life. People tried to stay out of their fights, but the hatred always found a way into the streets. Romeo, a young Montague, walked slowly along a quiet road with his friends. His heart felt heavy. He believed he was in love with a girl who did not love him back. He spent his days dreaming about her and his nights feeling lost. His friends tried to cheer him, but nothing helped. Romeo kept his feelings hidden, but they saw the sadness in his eyes. That same morning, on the other side of the city, Juliet Capulet woke in her room. She was only 13, full of hope and curiosity about the world. Her family was planning a great feast for the evening. Everyone was excited, especially her mother, who hoped Juliet would meet a noble and charming young man named Paris. Juliet listened politely, but her heart was not ready for marriage. She wanted to understand life before being asked to give it away. As the day passed, Romeo's friends heard about the Capulet feast. They knew the Montagues were not invited, but the temptation of a lively party was too strong. They tried convincing Romeo to join them, hoping it would lift his spirits. Romeo refused at first, saying his heart felt too troubled. But in the end they persuaded him. He put on a mask with the others and followed them into the night, not knowing that one evening would change every moment of his life. The Capulet home glowed with music, laughter, and bright lights. Servants hurried around with food and wine. Juliet entered the hall dressed in a beautiful gown, and everyone turned to look at her. She walked gracefully, though she felt nervous under the attention. She did not know that another pair of eyes had fallen upon her. Eyes belonging to someone she was never meant to meet. Romeo saw Juliet from across the room and his breath stopped. The sadness he carried for so long seemed to melt away in an instant. He asked himself if this could be love, something so pure and sudden that it made his heart beat faster. Juliet looked back at him, and for a moment, everything else felt far away. The music, the people, the walls of their feuding families. They walked toward each other as if something greater than themselves was pulling them closer. When they finally spoke, their voices were soft, unsure, but full of wonder. They touched hands and the world felt changed. Neither knew the other's name. Neither knew the danger. But in that brief meeting, something real and powerful had begun. Their moment was interrupted by Juliet's nurse calling her away. Romeo stood there watching her leave, determined to know who she was. But when he learned she was a Capulet, his heart fell. Juliet soon learned he was a Montague, and she felt the same fear. The people they came from would never allow their love. That night, after the feast ended, Juliet walked out onto her balcony, thinking about the stranger who touched her heart. She whispered to the sky, wondering why names mattered so much. Romeo, filled with longing, had climbed secretly into the garden. When he heard Juliet's gentle voice, he stepped forward. They looked at each other under the quiet moonlight, speaking the truth their families would never accept. They promised their love in simple, honest words. Knowing their families might tear them apart, they decided to seek help. Romeo turned to Friar Lawrence, a wise man who hoped that love might heal old wounds. The friar agreed to marry them in secret, praying that their union would bring peace to Verona. Juliet's nurse helped carry messages, playing her part in the hidden plan. By the next day, Romeo and Juliet were married quietly in the friar's small cell. They held hands and whispered vows filled with hope. They believed love would guide them. But the world outside their secret ceremony remained full of anger. Later that afternoon, the streets of Verona grew hot with rising tempers. Romeo's friend Mercutio met Juliet's hot-headed cousin Tybalt. Words were exchanged, sharp and reckless. Romeo rushed in, begging them to stop. But Tybalt, furious about Romeo sneaking into the Capulet feast, would not listen. In a sudden moment of violence, swords were drawn. Romeo tried to break the fight, but tragedy struck. Tybalt's blade reached Mercutio and he fell, wounded beyond saving. Mercutio's death broke something inside Romeo. Grief twisted into anger he could not control. He chased Tybalt and, in a moment of blinding rage, struck him down. When the fight ended, Tybalt lay still and Romeo realized what he had done. The prince declared that Romeo would not be executed, but he must leave Verona at once. His punishment was exile, which felt to Romeo like losing Juliet forever. Juliet learned of the terrible events just after spending her first and only night with Romeo. Her heart was torn between love for her husband and sadness for her cousin. When Romeo came to her under the cover of darkness, they held each other tightly, knowing it might be the last time. At dawn, Romeo left. Juliet watched him disappear over the hills with tears in her eyes. Her parents, unaware of her secret marriage, insisted she marry Paris. Juliet begged for more time, but her father became angry and ordered her to obey. Juliet ran to Friar Lawrence in despair, asking for a way to escape the marriage. The friar gave her a plan, one full of risk and uncertainty. She would drink a potion that would make her appear dead. Her family would place her in their tomb, and Romeo would meet her there when she awoke. They would leave Verona together, free at last. With trembling hands, Juliet drank the potion that night. Her eyes closed and she fell into a deep, death-like sleep. In the morning, her mother found her cold and unresponsive. The whole house erupted in grief. Juliet was carried to the Capulet tomb, surrounded by candles and silence. But the plan never reached Romeo. Instead, he heard from a friend that Juliet was dead. Shock and heartbreak crashed over him like waves. He bought poison from a poor apothecary and rode through the night to see her one last time. When he entered the tomb, the air was heavy and still. Juliet lay on a stone bed, dressed in white. Romeo touched her face gently, believing her lost forever. He whispered words of love, of hope, of sorrow. Then he drank the poison, choosing to join her in death rather than live without her. Moments later, Juliet's eyes opened. The potion had ended. She looked around the tomb and saw Romeo lying beside her. With shaking hands, she touched him, hoping he might wake. But his skin had grown cold. She cried softly, realizing the terrible truth. Finding no reason to live in a world without him, she took Romeo's dagger and pressed it to her heart. With one last breath, she joined him. When the families learned what had happened, their grief was greater than their hatred. Standing in the tomb where their children lay, they understood the cost of their anger. The Montagues and Capulets promised to end their feud forever. But peace came too late for Romeo and Juliet, whose love had burned bright and brief. Their story remained in Verona long after their families laid down their swords. People spoke of a love so strong that it dared to reach across walls built by hate. A love that tried to change the world even though the world was not ready for it. And those who heard their names remembered the lesson their lives had taught, that love can be powerful, but it must be protected or it may be lost. And so the tale of Romeo and Juliet lived on, not in anger, but in gentle memory of two young hearts who found each other in a divided world and held on, even when everything around them tried to pull them apart. Thank you for listening to this story of Romeo and Juliet. Their love may have ended in sorrow, but their message lives on, that peace is worth more than pride, and love is stronger than old wounds. If you enjoyed this narrative, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more timeless stories told in a simple and heartfelt way. See you in the next video.